Hi cottagers, welcome back to my channel. I'm Maddie Sanderson. You might notice that everything back here looks a little different. I have actually completely reorganized all of my books on the boat. And this is a video that I have been working on trying to finish for about 2 weeks now. And I have just been having problem after problem. And then every other video I've been trying to film, I've also been having issues with. So that is why there has been such a long length between when I last posted and now, because it's just been an uphill battle. So I figured today we're just going to do a simple, easy video that is hopefully just one-time shooting and done. A couple weeks ago, I had asked several of my friends from Instagram what books they would recommend to someone who wants to start getting into reading, who may have had, you know, some level of it growing up, but not really anything more than that, or someone who has taken a long break from reading and then wants to come back to it. So what are the books that they would recommend? And I had all kinds of answers all across the board. And I was kind of shocked by them just because I don't know. I hadn't read some of these. And then the ones that I had, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Wasn't one that I would have thought of, but it makes sense and I love that. So I wrote down all of these books and then I did go and I did read all of them, and I am now going to present them to you. So that way, if you have read these, then you now have a book that you can think, oh, I would recommend this to somebody if they want to start getting into reading, or maybe you've never read these. They would be great because every one of them that I didn't read, which I had only read 2 of these before, and then I reread them for this vlog, but every time it got me back into reading, it got me more excited to read again. So that was exciting, and I think that that's something that says a lot about these books, that they could definitely get someone who's never read before into reading, but it can also get you out of a reading slump. So that's something to think about. I will make sure to post all of the links for all of my friends on Instagram down below. That way you can go and follow them, show them some love, because we wouldn't have this video without them. So without further ado, let's get into this. The first recommendation was Pride and Prejudice, and this was a recommendation by A Little Overbooked, and she actually recommended this, and then also what was the other one? Princess Diaries, right? Yes, Princess Diaries. And I did read Princess Diaries. I just didn't love it a ton, but I could see that being something that was mainly just me because I loved the movie so much and it wasn't like the movie, and so I was really struggling with that. So that is 100% a me thing. But this I do recommend as a book that somebody needs to read if you've never really gotten into reading before. And of course this edition is stunning. I am obsessed with this edition. I want to get all of my Jane Austens in this edition if possible. Yeah, I'm not even sure. It's a Puffin and Bloom. Oh yes, I knew about that. I did know that. But I'm not sure if they have all the other ones on it. But anyways, Pride and Prejudice is a book that follows a family, but mainly a girl from a family named Lizzie, and it is her being kind of like a strong-willed, don't need no man sort of woman, and then she comes upon this just like basically a man who don't need no girl sort of vibes, and then lo and behold, their story unfolds and they start actually enjoying being around one another. It is one of my absolute favorite books. I love this book, but I also know that not everyone wants to read one that is written so long ago. You would rather something a bit more modern, and that's fine. I do recommend, if you don't want to read Pride and Prejudice, or you don't think that the person who wants to read Pride and Prejudice, or who wants to start getting into reading, would want to read Pride and Prejudice, another great book instead of this would be Pride and Premeditation, which is one that I talked about in my last video. And that is a very cute take on Pride and Prejudice, but that might also pique their interest to where maybe they would want to get into this. But then also, like, if you give them a cover like this that is just stunning, they're probably going to want to read it because it's just, I mean, it's too pretty to put down. Like, I don't even want to put it down because I just love it so much. It's so pretty. So this is a great recommendation. The next recommendation comes from Read This and Steep, and that is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I had never read a Kristen Hanna before. I had watched the show Firefly Lane, so I kind of knew what I was getting into in a bit, but I didn't at all. This was such a phenomenal book. I was crying in it. There wasn't a whole lot of laughter because it's not a very funny book. It is a very serious and heart-wrenching book, but it is one that I understand why so many people have this on their top reads whenever they read this. It follows two sisters, and they're completely different in just their personalities and the way that they handle things, and it follows them going through the beginning, for the most part, the beginning of the Nazi reign and the Holocaust that's happening, and then it follows them through it and just kind of how they both managed to come through this. So you have one sister who would prefer to, you know, stay hidden and just go with the flow and just make it through in that manner. But then you have the other sister who wants to fight for the freedom. And so she does it in her own way. Their lives end up colliding at some point, and one realizes that she can't be quiet, and the other one realizes that maybe she does need to start taking more of a step back. And it's just, oh my goodness, it was so stinking good. It is a thick book. She's a chunker, but it is worth it. And I do believe that if you were to give this to somebody and say, hey, I know that you're not really into reading, but I need you to just trust me on this. Get the audiobook of this, listen to it, or listen to it and read this at the same time. You will have created somebody who wants to become a reader, because this book, it gripped me from the very beginning. It's so good. And I don't know really what else to say about it, because it's one of those books where you know that this story itself didn't actually happen because it is fictional, but it is based off of a historical event that did happen. And so that was hard to remember and like to think about, that there were people, while it was fictitious in this, who actually did go through this stuff. And remembering that our world has not always been, you know, the sunshine and rainbows, which is not always, and it's definitely not right now, but this stuff happened, you know, and I think that's something to remember. And I think that that is something that we all need to actually like get out of these holes and actually go into stories like this and remember, or just be reminded of what happens. But that's something that for me, like I said, it genuinely helped me get out of a reading slump by reading this book, which I didn't expect. I thought, it's so thick, I am just going to have to slog through this because I want to know this book and I want to know everything about it before I recommend it, like my friend recommended it for us. And I was so thankful that I did. I did the tandem reading, so I listened to the audiobook while I read this at the same time, because we were on a camping trip and I wanted to try to have this done by the time we were done with our camping trip. And since I'm not a very fast reader, I was able to succeed in that. And I was so thankful that I did, even though I'm on my camping trip over there just like bawling my eyes out. But it was such, I mean, it was a very sad bawling my eyes out, because the moment that it happened, it was a very, very, very sad moment of the book. But I was so thankful that I had this book to read, because it's, I feel like, you know, my life hasn't necessarily changed because I read it, but I feel like it could have. Like, it's just, I'm so thankful that I have finally read this book. I think that everybody needs to read this one. If you were to pick either this one or Pride and Prejudice, I still think that you should probably read this one first. I definitely recommend this one. Another book that my friend from Read This and Steep was Finley Donovan is killing it. Now, there are 4 books to this series. I have only read this one, but what a fun time. This is one, if you have that friend who wants to start reading a book and they're like your quirky friend, the one who, they're always the ones making jokes, or they're the ones who, you know, they like to watch like rom-coms, sitcoms, things like that. This is the book that I would say probably go ahead and start them off with this one before you do anything that is more on the heavier side, because this will certainly get them hooked. Finley Donovan is a single mom. She's actually a divorcee, and it is about, I'm not sure how long they had been divorced. I can't remember. but it wasn't like for a long time thing. Like, this is fairly recent. She is also an author. She writes murder mystery novels, and she is just having a rough time in life right now. And she is meeting with her publicist about the current book that she's supposed to be producing. But because of all the chaos and the mayhem of becoming a divorced mom with 3 kids, 2 or 3 kids, I think it's just 2 kids actually, she doesn't have anything to present. So there's some funny things that happen at the beginning of the book before this meeting, and then she ends up at this meeting and she's talking to this lady, to her publicist, about like, what is this next book going to be about? And she's just kind of, you know, throwing stuff out there because she doesn't actually know, because she's not doing her job. And somebody beside her overhears this and also sees some of the stuff that I can't tell you because it's like, it's funny parts of the book and it's really fast, like you get into it really fast. But it's from stuff that happened that morning that have caused this woman to think that Finley Donovan is a hitman. So she hires Finley to become a hitman. And that is not at all what she does. That is not her job. That's not her living. That's not how she wants to make her money. But that is what she is being hired to do. So she's going through this dilemma of, do I try and be a hitman and make money? Because like, I need the money, desperately need the money, but I also would like be killing somebody. So do I want to do that? So anyways, it follows her in this like going back and forth. What should she do? What should she not do? And she decides, well, I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of like scope out the person and maybe see, like, maybe he is worth killing. But like, it's killing, you know, it doesn't matter if he's worth it or not, that's still killing somebody. And like, stuff happens where they end up thinking that Finley Donovan is a hitman for this man. And so she gets recommended to other people to become their hitman. And it's just following this quirky adventure. And that's what all the other books I believe are about, or somewhere along those lines, where, you know, it's something that people assume about her and then she has to kind of like figure out how to keep going because she wants the money, but she doesn't necessarily want to actually kill somebody. And so all these secrets become, they become told and seen by everybody. It's just a fun, quirky ride. I had not read a book like this before and I really, really enjoyed it. Was it like a 5-star for me? No, but it was definitely a 4-star. Like, I really had a great time with this. I truly believe that if somebody likes to laugh, they like some of like the murder mystery sort of things, or they like just mystery in general, then this is a book to recommend for them, because it will get them to where they are hooked. And I am excited to read the rest of these ones. And then after these, like, it made me want to start reading even more and more of those murder mystery books. It really got me into that, like I was kind of narrowed in on that, and I had to broaden my horizons because this video has a lot of different styles of books, so I had to get out of that. That way I could actually finish the other books. But Finley Donovan is killing it. Couldn't recommend it more. The next one comes from Eileen's Bookish Corner, and she recommended Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. I have known about this book for a very long time. Very, very, very long time. I remember the first time was I was working at a church camp. I want to say I was like 20 or 21 years old. I was probably 20 years old. And my friend had just finished reading this and she was like, it's the best book ever. So I am now 33 years old. That's a good 13 years of knowing about this book and never reading it. So then once it was recommended for this vlog, I figured, well, I should probably see what all the hype is about. So I went and I found a copy, because these can be found at thrift stores so easily. And so I found me a copy and I read it, and I am so thankful that I did. This is a reimagining of the Hosea and Gomer story from the Bible, but it is not an easy book to read when it comes to the things that our main character had to go through. So she goes by the name of Angel in this book, and Angel had a very, very hard upbringing, and it is extremely sad to learn about and to know more about, and you keep learning more and more about it as the book goes on. But then she obviously becomes a prostitute, because in scripture the same thing. So it is about her coming out of that, but then also a man who goes by the name of Hosea. He was told to go and find her, and that he was supposed to marry her. And it is the struggles of this good man who just wants a wife and who just wants to love her, struggling with the woman who doesn't believe that she's lovable, who doesn't believe that she's worth being loved, and who doesn't believe that she is deserving of anything good. And so it is these two polar opposites clashing with each other, where he says, I just want to love you, and she says, I don't want to be loved. And the story of how, like, does he break through to her, or does she go back to her old life, because she does keep running back to her old life. It is a very good redemption story. I talked to my best friend about this, and I recommended it to her, and she said that she had read it whenever probably about the age of when I learned about this book. And she said that she did not like it because it is not graphic. It's not a graphic book whatsoever, but it does explain Angel, who was a prostitute, like kind of how she thinks and views men. And it can be very, again, it's not graphic, but it can make you blush a little bit if that sort of stuff makes you uncomfortable. But it's not one where I'm like, you know, if Piper was to pick this up whenever she gets, you know, in her late teens, it wouldn't bother me for her to read this book. So it's just a personal preference on that front. I do think that this is a book that if you were to recommend this to someone for the first time that they're getting into reading, it's also a chunker, but audiobook it, or audiobook and read at the same time, and you'll get through it a lot faster. But it made me so excited about reading. I could not stop. I stayed up. I want to say I ended up staying up until about 2 in the morning finishing this book, because it was just so stinking good. And I have never read anything of Francine Rivers before, and I might pick up other stuff. I'm not really sure. I don't know what other stuff she's written, but she just did so wonderful with this book. She made you fall in love with not just Angel and then Hosea, or Michael, who's his first name's Michael, Angel and Michael, but you also began to love all of these other side characters. And you got to see that not just did Angel grow and not just did Michael grow, but other people in their lives grew because of watching them. And it kind of made you realize, like, sometimes that does happen with us, you know, like we grow by watching other people go through hard things, and what a blessing that is, you know. So sometimes, like, our struggles are never for ourselves, they're for other people. I could go on a whole thing about that, which I'm not going to, but that's kind of what this book made me think of. But it's also one, like, if I had a friend who loves love, or is believing, like, you know, I'm not a redeemable person, I don't have, you know, great qualities, or, you know, they had a rough upbringing, or they were told, you know, lies about themselves or whatever. This is a great book to give them, to show, like, well, that's just not true. You know, like, we can all come from a bad background, but we can be redeemed in some way. We can come out on the other side, and this is such a good book for that. But it's also just a wonderful romance. It's not even like a slow burn, because I don't think that would fit into this category well, but it is one of those where it's like, it's not the same as when you have two people who have, you know, faith in themselves, and they have a lot of confidence in themselves, falling in love, and then eventually, you know, like becoming husband and wife or whatever it is. But you have somebody who is deeply, deeply, deeply broken and wants to be better and wants to be loved, but doesn't know how, and she doesn't understand love. And then you see someone who just desperately wants to love her. Those two things coming together is so good, and it is just not seen that often in books anymore. It really isn't. So it is a wonderful, wonderful take. It made me, like, I just love my husband more because of it, and I just love reading more because of it. This was such a good book, and I cannot believe it took me 13 years to finally pick this one up, but I could not recommend this more. So if you have a friend, again, you have a friend who loves love, who loves to read about, like, the olden times as well, because this is set in America, so this was back whenever, you know, you had cowboys and stuff, and they definitely worked the land. So, like, think like Little House on the Prairie. This is a book for them, definitely. So make sure you, and if you haven't read this book, and if you've heard about it for 13 years, go ahead and pick it up, do yourself a favor, pick it up and read it, because you will be so thankful that you did. Okay, and then lastly, I was sent Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone by What Vivian Reads. She was one who, I loved her response, because she didn't just say, oh, I got the perfect book, here it is. She was like, which the others didn't either, don't get me wrong, but her response, she said, whenever I think about what did I want in my first book that I was ever reading, or what do I think someone would want to experience, it's the nostalgia of like childhood, right? Like that is what gets us in it. And that's why so many people love Harry Potter, or that so many people love just reading some of the younger kids books, because you get that nostalgia of growing up reading these things. So you have like, you know, Narnia, or you have Lord of the Rings, you can have, you know, any of your Disney princesses, stuff like that. That's why we also love remakes so much, because it is the nostalgia. So she recommended this, and I was so excited because I had this version and I had not read this version. And the last time I read Harry Potter, this specific book, was whenever it first came out. So I mean, I was young. Like, I don't even know, I don't remember when it first came out, but I was very young. So I don't remember reading this. Honestly, I only remember reading Goblet of Fire and Deathly Hallows. I don't remember reading any of the other ones. So I was very excited to pick this one back up and to start this entire adventure again, because I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. I'm a big old nerd. I'm a Hufflepuff hardcore through and through. And this version, if you don't know, and if you haven't seen my other videos, is a wild version. It is from, who is it? Minalima? I want to say, maybe that's how you say her name. I don't know. But they do, well, it says it right there. They do these super quirky, and I still, like, I'm trying to protect these as much as I can, so there's probably going to be things that fall out, but they do like your pictures on some of these. On some of them it's just, you know, pages that just show like a little bit of a picture, but literally every page has something, even if it's just the filigree that's in the corners. Or you have, like, I just lost a piece. You have, like, this is whenever Harry Potter gets his letter, and so then you have the actual letter that you, let me see, this is very hard to do at this angle. Anyways, you have the actual letter, and it has everything, you know, like how it was actually, I mean, I don't remember if this was actually written down in the book itself, because it's been a hot minute since I've read it, or read that version. So I don't know if that was actually written in it, but this is the sort of stuff that, like, I would think that that was what it actually looked like, you know, and like it actually looks like the letter right there. I had so much fun reading this, and I just kept thinking while reading this that, like, if I had this, like, look at this. Okay, let me see if I can show you this. This is the scene where he ends up, like, you have the chessboard, and it looks a bit, you know, wonky because Piper got a hold of it and she ripped it a little bit, but besides that, you have the whole chessboard. And if I had read this exact version whenever I first started reading as a kid, like, my imagination is pretty great, but it is nothing like it was whenever I was a kid. So could you imagine having that imagination and then reading a book that is, one, phenomenal in general, but then that is like this sort of interaction? Oh my goodness. It would make every other book that I read pale in comparison, because it was just so much fun. And it really did bring the entire book to life for me, which is not hard for me because I know the story. I've watched the movies. We watch the movies every single year. It's like a tradition for us. So, like, I know what is going on in this, but then to reread it with this version, I was obsessed. And I am now, like, determined. I pray that they will get every single one of these books done, which will be really, really hard when you get to the thicker books, but they've got to do it. And I will own every single one of these because they are so much fun. And I do think that this is a wonderful book to recommend to somebody who wants to get into reading. So if you have that friend who really likes like the whimsy and they like fantasy stuff, they're obsessed with, you know, dragons, which aren't really in this, but that sort of, you know, era or whatever. You have people who love anything that has to do with just like quirky and weird, then send them to Harry Potter, because I was watching, I think her name, oh, I don't remember what her channel is, but her name I believe is Kalia. And she is also on YouTube, and she is doing a video series of her reading Harry Potter for the first time. And she's in her 20s, and she had never read it before. And she's like, I kind of knew a little bit, but not really a ton. And she was thankful for that, because now she's not shocked by anything, or she is shocked by the stuff that she's reading because she didn't know. And watching her read that was so much fun, because it's just like you're experiencing these things that we grew up with, and like that's been our life. But to be that old and experience it for the first time, I couldn't even imagine. And like that would be so much fun. But this is a book that, yes, absolutely, you have a friend that wants to get into reading, send them this, because it is going to, for one, they're now stuck for 7 more or for 6 more books, so they're in it for the long haul now, and so you definitely are going to have a reader after that. But it does give you, like, when you come off of this, off of reading all 7 of them, you're definitely going to have a slump, because you're not going to know, like, well, what do I read now? But I still recommend this. Well, thank you guys so much for spending time with me. I hope that these books actually were great recommendations for you, and that even if you are currently into reading, you just don't really know what to pick up next, pick up one of these books and you will not be disappointed. They were all such wonderful reads. And there was also an honorable mention is Divine Rivals. The only reason why that is not in this actual video is because I just couldn't get my hands on a copy, and I didn't want to buy a new one just yet because I had other books that I needed to buy. I just did not have that one in this video, but that is also apparently a really great one for you to read, or to recommend for somebody who wants to start reading. So thank you guys so much for being here. Until next time, I will see you guys then. Bye.